Hey Tekoa friends, we are so excited that you're joining us today. We are jumping in to talk about prioritizing relationships in your life and how when we set the right priorities, we get to experience some freedom and hope. So Austin and I are just going to be sharing a little bit about that and sharing some ways that you can apply this to your life.
Yeah, I think it's so important for us to have the right priorities in life. And I think we all have different relationships. We have a relationship with God, we have a relationship with significant other, if that person is in our life, we have friendships, we have family, parents, different relationships that we all have. And I think it's really important that we have the priorities right in our life. And I think I've seen for so many people that there's a mismatch in how much they're prioritizing relationships, and often it comes as a mismatch with the person on the other side. And so, do you and your spouse prioritize that relationship as much? Do you and your friend prioritize each other's? Do you drop everything to go do whatever that friend wants, or do you not because you care about your spouse, or you care about yourself and you're single and whatever it is? But are we matching things up? And I think looking at this, for me, it's really important to have the priorities right, and the priorities for me are God first, family second, others third, and that's kind of how I look at things. But the way that I help prioritize it correctly is by seeing what God wants, because since God is the first priority, He cares about the other relationships, and it's not that I'm not supposed to love my wife because I am, or my daughter, or my friends, but I do that in the context of loving God. And so even in my priorities with friends, I might sometimes drop everything to go help a friend because it's the right thing to do. They're in a time of need. They have to have some support in that moment, because they just went through a loss, or they're just dealing with something really, really important. And my family understands that. I might have to say no to the family dinner that was planned so I can drop and go. And I mean, I think you did that, recently for a friend where, okay, you told Danny, I have to go, and you were supposed to do something today, and you can't do it anymore. You got to support me so I can support my friend because it's the right thing to do in the season. But there's other times where you need to say no to the other people so that you can support your family, and that's really important. And I think knowing what your priorities are, I think that's one of the things I really want to share today is know your priorities so that you can make the right decisions versus just doing whatever seems best at the time.
Well, and I think you kind of mentioned it. God is first, and then there is an order underneath that, but sometimes that order shifts depending on the seasons, but God still stays at the top. And personally for me, there was a season where that wasn't the case. Life was pretty hard. Like, there was a whole slew of things that happened. We had some deaths in the family. There were some things that happened with my mom, and it was just a rough season. And quite frankly, I was pretty mad at God, and I didn't fully understand what was happening, like why all this was happening to me. And so when I walked away from my faith in that season, I ended up experiencing more heartache and more frustration because I was trying to fix it all on my own. I was trying to set the priorities for my life. I was trying to find purpose for my life. And by doing it on my own, I was just so weighed down because I didn't have the wisdom from God. Yeah. I didn't have that direction from God, and I didn't have that ultimate purpose from Him. And so in trying to do it on my own, I actually was failing more and tripping up more and stumbling more. And it wasn't until coming back to my relationship with Him that I realized how much I was truly struggling and not succeeding, even though there were times that there were good things that happened, and life wasn't all hard. But there was a perspective shift that happened when I realized, like, putting God in that first seat, in that driver's seat, completely changed the rest of my life.
I think one of the things I want to talk about that too is that was really pivotal for me as I was thinking about marriage, because for me, I was really concerned about what was going to happen 5 or 10 years down the road. I mean, we see so many marriages that they don't last and it doesn't work out. And I was thinking through, like, well, how do you not get to that point? And, like, what assurances do I have of that not happening? Because I don't want to get to that point. And, do I even want to take the first step if that's where it's going to lead? And what God showed me was that if we have our priorities right, that's not going to matter. Because what I was afraid of was my wife and I changing. I was afraid that I was going to go this way, I was going to go this way, and 10 years from now, you're like, oh, we're different people. You hear that all the time. Like, we're not who we were. Because you're not. We all change.
I was going to say, spoiler alert, you're not the same person that you were when you got married. That's a good thing.
Yeah. It's only been, coming up on 6 years, and we're already very different people than when we got married. But the thing that hasn't changed and the thing that is the same is that God continues to remain number one in both of our relationships. And so that means, despite everything else that changes, the trajectory of the ultimate thing that we're still going towards is the same. And so while our paths might get closer and further over time, they're still the same destination that we're going forward to. And I think that really helps in a relationship.
And I think another thing too to touch on is when we talk about prioritizing people in our lives, sometimes we forget to prioritize ourselves. And I think that there's a connotation sometimes that if you do that, you're being selfish, but the reality is you're not. You pour out so much for others, and especially for me in this season of being a mom and a wife and a pastor and a friend and a sister and a daughter and like there's so many different titles that I carry in my relationships, but then also in life in general of being a chef and a house cleaner and all the things that we don't think about. But if we're not taking care of ourselves and we're not setting that as a priority, we are not of any service to anybody.
Yeah.
And I think that that's such a hard lesson to learn. But if you don't take the time to do the things that fill you up, if you don't take the time to invest in yourself, to grow yourself, to challenge yourself, then you're no good to anybody. And I think sometimes we think, oh, but if I do all these things, like it's such a wonderful, noble cause, which there's some truth to that. But also, if you are bruised and beaten and on your last leg at the end of the race, like that's not the life God wants for you. God wants you to have a full life that is joyful and not this like martyrdom. And I think sometimes we fall into that, and being reminded that it's okay to take 5 minutes for yourself, an hour for yourself, a day for yourself, a weekend for yourself, whatever it is in whatever season, making sure that you prioritize that. And I think sometimes even for people who are single, it's like, oh, well, I'm married to my work and I have these things that I need to do. And those are good things. But again, if you are not healthy, if you are not in a good place, you are no good to anybody.
Well, and I think we even talked about that a couple of weeks ago when we talked about Sabbath rest and the idea that God calls us all to take a day off throughout the week. And we need to do that, or we just can't stay healthy.
Right.
So I think in our relationships, as we kind of wrap up our time together today, I think just that idea that it matters what we prioritize, and I want to challenge everybody to make sure that you've thought that through and are intentional about it, because I think that gets us in trouble too when we're not intentional. We hurt a friend and we didn't mean to, or we hurt a spouse, or whatever it might be, our family. But if you know what they are, and that might still happen, you might hurt somebody else. But if you're sure that this was the right decision versus, well, now I feel conflicted because that person's hurt and I don't even know if I made the right decision, like actually have it. I think for me and our family, and we're going to talk about this on Sunday, that we have a family mission statement, and that family mission statement outlines our priorities as a family, to God first and our family second and people third. And because of that, we can help make decisions with one another, and I respect the decisions Allie makes, she respects my decisions, assuming we did it according to our priorities. But I think so many people they don't even have their priorities.
Right.
And so I think that would be what I would love to just share today, is just encourage you, if you don't have that established, you don't have to write out a mission statement, or maybe you should and it would be helpful to you, but what are your priorities and how do you really clearly communicate that? So.
And we'd love to talk to you more about that, whether that be through the chat or joining us at one of our neighborhood gatherings. We would love to help you set your priorities and help you come into a relationship with God, because I think, like we said, ultimately that is the main priority to help us along our life journey. And if you don't have one yet, we would love to talk to you. But also join us next week as we continue talking more about relationships and priorities and just life in general. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, so hit the subscribe button, like the video, and we'll see you back next time.